The tape keeps spinning. They say the human scream can't be accurately captured on cassette, something about the magnetic fields or the tape's limitations, but I know that's a lie, because I've heard mine, looping in the background of what I thought was just another found tape, playing under the voice of the man who took my face and left me watching myself scream. I used to digitize old VHS tapes for cash, mostly funeral reels, weddings, community access shows. But this unlabeled cassette wrapped in butcher paper and twine, arrived in a box that smelled like mothballs and pennies, and when I slid it in and pressed play, the screen flickered like an old eyelid fluttering open, and his voice came on like molasses, slow, rich, and wrong. It was a simple brown box, the kind you might use to pack away old clothes or dead memories, but when I opened it, dust bloomed from the flaps like spores from a corpse, dry and clinging and scented with something I can only describe as forgotten meat, something that lived briefly and then rotted long. The label on top was handwritten in thick black marker, "Play Me." Not even, "Do not open," or "Private," or anything ominous like you'd expect from the movies. Just that simple, two-word request. A demand, really. It dared me. I was in the basement of my uncle's house, the one we inherited after he finally died in prison last spring, the Bell Tower Butcher. The newspapers had called him, as if the nickname softened what he'd done to the girls, as if turning his crimes into alliteration might somehow stuff their broken bodies into neat little headlines and clean up the mess he'd left behind. We never spoke about him. Not when he was caught, not during the trial, not when the cops found the tapes buried under the crawlspace, each one labeled with a name and a date and an expressionless face staring out of the plastic window like it was frozen mid-scream. My mom said we didn't talk about family business. I said fuck that. Now, all these years later, the house is mine. The secrets, too. And that box. Inside was a single VHS tape, no label, no name. Just a cracked cassette with the magnetic tape slightly unraveling, the edges stained with something dark and sticky like dried syrup or old blood, and I should have known better, should have tossed it into the fire or the trash or the goddamn river, but I didn't. Because the moment I touched it, I felt something pull behind my eyes. And I needed to know. I hooked up the old TV I'd found in the attic, one of those massive boxy things with the static lines that hang like ghosts when you flip it on, and fed the tape into the VCR with a soft, resisting click, and the screen went black. Then gray. Then something else. No intro. No timestamp. Just a flicker of light. A dim room. A girl, maybe 15, 16. Strapped to a wooden chair with her mouth taped shut, wide eyes like cracked porcelain, staring right at the lens like she already knew no one would ever come for her. Then, a voice. His voice. My uncle. Not angry. Not excited. Just calm. Warm, even. Like he was speaking to a friend or reading a bedtime story. They always think the worst part is the knife, he said, off-screen. But it's not. It's the waiting. The knowing. The camera panned slowly, methodically, as though operated by a machine, or someone with all the time in the world, and it revealed the room's walls, each covered in photographs, not hung but nailed, crooked and curled with moisture, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all of different girls, all with their eyes gouged out. Every few seconds, the camera would zoom in, too close, nauseatingly close, to show the texture of skin, of scars, of healing done badly, done deliberately. The girl on the tape began to shake, not cry, her eyes were beyond that, but tremble in this stiff, juddering way like her body was trying to lift itself off the chair and flee without moving. Then came the sound. The scraping. Long. Drawn out. Metal against metal, but slow, dragging, like something heavy being sharpened for something that deserved pain more than death. My uncle stepped into frame. He was naked from the waist up, covered in what I first thought was dirt until I saw the fingerprints, the faint marks of hands that had pressed against him in panic, now faded, now permanent, and he smiled at the girl in the chair like she was a guest of honor at a banquet meant just for her. "Do you know why I record this?" he asked her. She didn't move. So it never ends. Not for you. Not for me. Not for the ones who watch. The screen cut to black. Then static. Then a new girl. A different room. Same chair. And I couldn't stop it. I reached for the remote, but the tape kept spinning, the eject button jammed, the screen locked in that grainy, color-drained footage that felt more real than anything outside the frame, and part of me, some hungry, shameful part, couldn't look away. Because now the girls weren't strangers. They were faces I remembered from childhood. From school. From the missing posters that lined the telephone poles when I was 13. I saw Kayla Monroe, the girl who sat behind me in homeroom and always wore jelly bracelets. I saw Alyssa Jameson, who had vanished on her way to youth group one summer and whose father blew his brains out 6 weeks later. And then I saw my sister. Bound to the same chair. The same mouth taped. The same eyes screaming louder than any voice could. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the frozen image of my sister strapped to that wooden chair. Could have been minutes or hours or days for all I knew, but what I do know is this: the screen blinked once, just once, like a shutter closing over a bleeding eye, and when it came back, she was looking directly at me. Not the camera. Me. It wasn't the way people look into lenses when they're desperate for someone to help them. It was direct. Focused. Aimed like a knife. Like she knew I was watching now. And her lips moved under the tape. Not just trembling. Not mouthing for help. Forming my name. I staggered backward, nearly tripped over a box of dusty books, and the room, the basement, felt like it had swallowed all its air and left me drowning in the heavy stink of mold, mildew, and something wet and coppery, like meat gone soft in the sun. The tape didn't stop. It kept rolling. But something had changed. The image began to distort, not the usual VHS static, but warping, breathing, like the tape was pulling in oxygen just to stay alive. And I swear to you, Zoppy, the screen pulsed, like a wound. The room on the screen had changed too. No longer the sparse, concrete walls of a basement torture chamber. Now, it was this basement. My basement. I recognized the black mold crawling up the support beam near the washer. The cracked light bulb overhead. The ratty blanket I had laid across an old recliner and forgotten about. And in the center of it all, the chair. Still there. Occupied. But empty. It's hard to explain what I mean. The girl was in the chair, but she wasn't. It was like a visual echo, an afterimage. I could see her, and yet when I blinked, she vanished. When I opened my eyes, she was back. She began to move. Slowly. The tape showed her lifting her head. And at the exact same time, something creaked behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just the dark corners of a house too old to stand and too angry to fall. But the VCR was still humming. The screen was still playing. And now my sister, on the tape, or the thing that wore her face, was smiling. Not in relief. Not because help had come. It was the kind of smile people make when they know a terrible secret. A smile full of blood and broken fingernails and hours spent screaming through tape. Then the whispering started. At first I thought it was the machine, maybe feedback, maybe warped audio, but no, it was inside the walls, inside the ducts, crawling along the beams like spiders made of voice. "Let us out," it said. "Let us out. Let us out. Let us out." Over and over. Each repetition more wet, more desperate, until it sounded like dozens of mouths pressing against drywall and cinder block, vomiting sound like bile. I looked back at the screen. And now, there were multiple chairs. Not one. Not two. A circle of them. And each one held a body. Motionless. Twisted. Faces I recognized from old newspaper clippings and milk cartons and nightmare scraps I never realized were memories. Then came the worst part. Uncle Henry stepped into frame again. Except this time, he wasn't 20 years younger. He looked exactly as he did the last time I saw him. In his orange jumpsuit. In court. Only now, he wasn't smiling. He was staring at me. "You let me rot in there," he said. "You let the tape stop." But it never stopped. Not really. It kept spinning. Even when they buried me, even when they cremated the box, the reel kept turning, and I kept seeing, kept filming. He reached down, out of frame. Lifted something slowly. A knife. Rusty. Serrated. With a handle made of bone. I heard footsteps. Not on the tape. In my house. Upstairs. Deliberate. Heavy. Measured. And I realized something. I hadn't locked the front door. I hadn't even closed it properly when I brought the box inside. I backed away from the TV, still staring as the footage kept playing like it had no end, no mercy, no finish line, and the girl in the chair, my sister, began to bleed. From the eyes. From the ears. From her mouth and the slits between her fingers where her nails had been pulled out. And she was laughing. Softly. Almost tenderly. Like she was proud of me. Like she knew I was next. Then I heard it. The clatter of the VCR ejecting. The screen went black. The tape rolled out, smoking. And carved into the magnetic strip, over and over, as if with a razor, "You're the next recording." The air changed after the tape ejected. I didn't mean in a poetic sense. It physically changed. The temperature dropped by 10 degrees in a single breath. My lungs stung like I'd just inhaled liquid nitrogen. My hands went numb. The exposed skin on my neck felt like it had been slapped by something old and wet and not entirely dead. And then came the smell. Something behind me had opened. Something in the house. Something that had waited for the moment the screen went black. Because now, it was off script. Now, it wasn't a memory. Now, it was real time. I heard the click again, mechanical, deliberate, hungry. It was coming from behind the furnace. Another click. Like a tape recorder. Like something was hitting play again. I couldn't move at first. My body had seized up with that full-body terror that doesn't tremble or scream but turns the skeleton to lead. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. I could feel my own breath turn against me, each inhale louder than it should have been, like I was betraying my location with every shaky gasp. Then the floorboard upstairs cried out. Just once. A footstep. Right above me. In the hall. Leading toward the stairs. I grabbed the tape, still warm, still exhaling that metallic stink like burnt hair, and shoved it into the cardboard box. I kicked the whole thing behind the dryer. I shouldn't have touched it again. I know that now. The blood it had soaked up was still wet, still slick, and I could feel the words carved into the strip burning into my palm. "You're the next recording." I heard the doorknob rattle. Not the basement door. The front one. The one I never locked. It clicked. Turned. Opened. And someone stepped inside. No rush. No urgency. Just the kind of slow, methodical pace that people have when they know exactly where they're going. I ducked low and crawled toward the stairs, trying not to breathe, trying not to even think loud, because whatever had entered wasn't breaking in, it was returning. It knew the layout. It knew the route. Another click. But this one wasn't from upstairs. It came from the basement now. Right behind me. I turned, and I wish I hadn't. Because I saw her. She was in the chair again. But not on the screen. In the room. In the fucking room. My sister. Eyes wide and black and wrong. Arms duct taped so tightly the skin had bubbled up around the silver. Her mouth was gone, no lips, no teeth, just a hole. A perfect, yawning slit like a second belly carved open in her face, and from it came the same whisper I'd heard on the tape, but this time, it was inside my skull. Play it again. And behind her, standing tall, too tall, in the back corner by the broken water heater. Uncle Henry. But not quite. His face was there. But longer. Stretched. As if the film had distorted, pulling the edges until only the impression of him remained. His hands weren't hands anymore. They were cameras. Old shoulder-mounted monstrosities with red blinking lights in place of knuckles. Each time the light blinked, I heard the click again. The one that meant a new scene had started. He didn't walk. He glided. As if the floor beneath him had become one long dolly track. I turned and ran up the stairs, but they felt longer than they had any right to, like they'd stretched into infinity between one blink and the next. Every step I took, I heard another click behind me. Every time I turned my head, the walls behind me twitched, like they were re-recording themselves over old footage. Even the shadows had grain now. VHS grain. I hit the kitchen, and the front door was wide open. Outside, the street was gone. Just static. Endless static. Like someone had taped over the world. I slammed the door shut and backed away, and that's when I saw the living room mirror. Only it wasn't showing my reflection. It was showing the tape. Not the same one. A new one. One still recording. Me. Right now. Right in this moment. On the screen, I was facing the mirror. But behind me, behind my mirrored self, was him. Henry. Eyes white. Skin flayed from the neck down. Cameras twitching on both arms. And his mouth, stitched closed in jagged loops of film strip, was humming. A low, constant, gurgling hum like someone trying to choke down a reel of tape. Click were recording. I turned around. He was there. In the flesh. In the house. In my space. Except it wasn't my space anymore. I screamed. Loud enough to crack my own throat. He lunged. And everything shattered into black. I woke up gagging on film. No, not a metaphor. Actual VHS tape, dry and brittle, spooled down my throat like someone had tried to thread me through a projector. I clawed at my face, tore the plastic ribbon from between my lips, and it just kept coming, yards and yards of it, thick with blood and bile, coated in human teeth, some still with roots. I was on the living room floor. The TV was on. Snowstorm static. The kind that buzzes against your eardrums like 1,000 flies trapped in a coffin. And I wasn't alone. The mirror was gone. In its place, mounted on the wall, was a screen. Playing me. Screaming. Crying. Running. Gagging. Every moment from the past night, already cut and stitched and edited to hell, spliced together into a single unbroken reel of suffering. A tight shot of my face. Zoom on the moment I found the tape. Wide shot when I ran. Shaky cam when I begged the mirror to show me the real world again. And then, playback froze. On my eyes. Bloodshot. Empty. A subtitle appeared beneath the frame, in dripping white text, last known recording. And suddenly, the footage moved again, but I wasn't doing anything. I was standing. Walking. Bleeding from my mouth. Dragging my fingers down the hallway wall and humming something that didn't belong to me. I looked down. My hands were covered in blood. Nails missing. Fingers cracked sideways like broken film reels. I didn't remember getting up. But the tape was playing it. And the sound, oh God, the soundtrack. It wasn't music. It was a woman screaming. Over. And over. And over. And over. The same scream. The same pitch. The same length. Like someone had recorded the perfect shriek and was looping it endlessly, burying it under layers of humming and mechanical clicks and wet, shuddering breathing. I turned to run. And slammed straight into Uncle Henry. But his face was my face now. And mine was stitched into the tape player lodged in his chest. He opened the slot. Revealed a new tape. Labeled in blood, the final cut. He held it out. Pressed it into my chest. And whispered, once it's played, you can't rewind. You can't pause. You can only pass it forward. He vanished. No smoke. No fanfare. Just gone. But the tape burned in my hand. Still warm. Still bleeding. Still spinning inside, like it already knew what it contained. I should have destroyed it. I should have burned the house down. I should have driven to the ocean and thrown it into the trench where light dies. But I didn't. I mailed it. To someone I hated. To someone who deserved to be watched. Except, I think the tape didn't care who watched it. Only that someone would. Because now I hear the hum at night. From inside the walls. From the reflection. From the TV even when it's off. And sometimes, when I wake up screaming, I find new footage playing on the screen. Footage I don't remember being part of. Footage of strangers. Dying. Begging. Being recorded. And in the corner of every frame, me. Smiling. Camera for a hand. Final warning if you find a VHS on your doorstep with no return address. If it smells like copper and old fire. If it's labeled the final cut or has no label at all. Don't play it. Because the tape record's back. And once it starts spinning, you'll never hear silence again. Just the click. The hum. And the sound of your own death on replay.